And welcome back, everyone. We are on our third and final hour, and before we went on our break, we were talking about what is disclosure, and Laura Uplinger is going to discern her ideas on what is going on with disclosure.
Beautiful disclosures of these last 30-some years. I know many are familiar with it, but this intelligence of the universe, to know from a Cartesian mind that I was coming from, that the universe is intelligent and intelligible, that each cell, each seed has its own intelligence, that each element combined with another element brings an interaction, a network, a web of intelligence. That for me was fabulous. If each one of my trillions of cells knows about each other, is an entity with whom I can work, has a soul, has everything. I'm just a host of trillions. Every single little seed I plant will know, because of perhaps a marvelous microchip, what to take from the four elements. That constant revelation of profound beauty, an inner and outer beauty of each element we eat, we admire. Whew, this is a gorgeous environment. That makes it even more weird when we start destroying it. But the disclosure is that, careful, everything is able to feel, to think, to breathe in their own way. I don't think a tree has lungs, but it does breathe. So not every person will easily think that a cell has its intelligence. Boy, if I don't eat, I die. So I depend on every seed that knows how to grow a fruit, a vegetable, something, so that I can live. So my very life is the physical life here is depending on that gorgeousness of intelligence out there. So as there is no such a thing as out there and in here, it's not separate.
Disclosure is such a wide-ranging subject. Disclosure is passports. Disclosure is UFOs. Disclosure is the bankers. Disclosure is the slave society. Disclosure is our history. Disclosure is not something that keeps us in unawareness. Disclosure is not continued stagnation. Disclosure is not a concept that is taken lightly. When you ask for disclosure, you get the whole package, everything that everyone's just talking about. There's a certain things that disclosure is, and then there's a lot of things that disclosure is not. Disclosure is not the continuing of the domination and control that we go through. Disclosure is sovereignty. Disclosure is freedom, the ability to write music and not have to worry about protection and patent laws on a riff someone wrote 42 years ago. Disclosure allows creativity. Disclosure allows the connection that Laura was speaking about. Disclosure allows our culture to survive past what domination and control has damaged it. There are individual cultural habits that need to be saved amongst our world. Disclosure will not come until our species at an uncollective level has enough trust to know that our species will survive. And that's the cusp, this precipice that Sacha keeps speaking about. We are on that on individual level. In equity, individuals come to get an injunctive order, to get a balance, a reciprocity, or a zero frequency and exchange of energy amongst sentient beings. In equity and equanimity, we can find our sovereignty as beings expressing the I am presence of now. And in this now moment, we get the future, which is creation, inspiration, and dreams. And now we come to the next layer of this broadcast here. We've talked about so many subjects. But what can people take away today from this panel that's here? What can people say tomorrow? I can change the world by writing a document, by writing a paper, or starting a documentary, or becoming the next person who just becomes a cell phone documentarist. Maybe we need the cell phone news network that shows real truth. There are things that we can do as communities and individuals, and we need leaders who want to lead with a common moral code of unity, sovereignty, disclosure at all of its levels, and making sure that no one is left behind. In unity, there isn't anyone left behind. The light, the dark, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything that's out there gets the light of day shined upon it. And those that need to be incarcerated for those levels will be incarcerated. And there'll be another layer that needs compassion and forgiveness because they were in unawareness of the abuses they were putting on others. Because everything in this world is upside down and inside out. People wearing costumes.
In Revelation terms, it is the great tribulation that's upon us. And it's a beautiful place to be because there's so much white noise. There's so much cacophony that actually in that epic white noise it's the perfect place to discover self, because one is almost forced to retreat from the lies, the deceptions, the traumas, the treasons being perpetuated us at every corner, every turn, every angle. It's a tremendous blessing in point of fact, because it's the sandpaper against which we find that traction to express ourselves in our finest way. And that, again, comes down to a relationship with self, which engenders, by a function of necessity, a true relationship with self engenders pure truth, or central sun. And when we then engage with that quanta, it cannot leave us. It does not leave us. This is Christ consciousness. This is Buddha consciousness, Krishna consciousness, Bodhisattva, the living man, the living woman, engaging fully as the anchor point, the fulcrum of the heavens to this mortal realm.
It's all about nurturing self, others, all kinds of others, as the consequence of the true being.
We need a culture of nurturers now. And I've been saying for many, many years...
Parking ticket attendants. Can we have an agreement, a broad agreement here, that we don't allow parking ticket attendants into the new world?
I agree. Self-parking cars. There it is.
Oh.
Their job is gone. That's already there.
And I think one of the things that we're doing is the well-building consciousness that we're bringing into it, just the way that we're coming together as volunteers. We have the permission among ourselves to do this work that we already love to do. So I think that that's an important part that so many people aren't aware of.
I love doing these things. They're such fun conversations when you get people that have not been together in a certain format, and to see all of these ideas that come there, and everyone's common layer of unity, common moral code really comes up, and you see each person's truth and heart space and passions. And when these passions come out and don't conflict and cause egos to go up, but here everything is in a flow. And we've got another 40 minutes to say we can change the world here. We can come up with concepts yet unseen. And I want to be able to have people to take that home with them, that inspiration, creation, and co-creation from this group here. Yes, you can. You can start your own cell phone video nation that begins recording sovereignty moments or conversations. What is spirituality and sovereignty? What is true law sovereignty? Begin asking the children, what does sovereignty mean to you? What does equity mean to you? What does disclosure mean to you? Instead of, all the selfies of people taking pictures of them, there's what is disclosure to you in 500 words? Let's ask the 6th grade students out there.
Yeah, powerful question.
More than the word disclosure would be, what's a spaceship and what do you think about them? That you can answer kids.
When I was young, I was going through an experience where I was still in the innocence of the child and becoming an adult. And I could see, as a person that was highly intuitive in the experiences I had when I was much younger, when there was a time where people fall out of the social consciousness of the children and the social adult consciousness of preteen, teen, adult, so on and so forth. And there are particular children who stay in that consciousness frame and understand from their perspective what disclosure is, because you're the ones that are constantly psychically projecting your shame, your blame, your guilt, your limitations, and your fears and your expectations. And they understand that because that's the children are sponges learning and growing up. At the moment, in the conception, every fight and argument is about them. Every moment of love is about them. When that child is out of the womb and is 2 years old, and let's say it's sitting in its crib and you are silently having a little discussion about the bills, but it gets mentally heated, that child is still a sponge. That is dense energy. And a common thing for people to understand is learning how to remove dense energy. The oldest form of removal of dense energy is laughter. And that's what the children are able to teach the adults about disclosure. If you can't laugh at it to heal from it, there's something really wrong. It's the nature and seriousness and heaviness of the propaganda we must all consume. And then the propaganda about our sacred masculine and sacred feminine, which has been stolen from us. And the truth of what those truly can be as conscious birthing is to be an orgasmic experience. And yet it's a destructive time for so many women. We as a species have to come into that unity moment where it says everyone experiences truth and valued and cannot be forgotten, because it is our legacy we hand to the world and all 7 future generations.
Yes.
Delivered as only Andrew Bartzis can deliver. Thank you, Andrew. That's
right.
Wonderful. I'm going to write the stuff up and actually read a script, because no one could have that kind of fluidity of expression. You've got an auto cue, haven't you? Just like Barack Obama.
That's right. I specialize in my soliloquies like this. So we have a lot of things we can discuss.
One thing I'm able to say is that the land holdings around the world that are leaning in toward the New Earth Trust at this time are in excess of 20,000 square kilometers. So the last time we spoke, Andrew, I think we were somewhere around, hovering around the 1,000 square kilometer mark. That was only a few short months ago, 3 months ago, I think.
Yep.
And it's now times 20, over 20,000 square kilometers of land. So remember that this is land contained by communities and by people all around the world who are affixing that land, or in the process of affixing that land, to the protectorate. So we don't centralize the land, we don't own it, but those various parcels of land in about 130 to 150 locations in over 75 countries around the world are simply docking into the extraterritorial and supranational jurisdiction that we have created as our own court of record and as our own trust. And we formed the trust under its own cognizance. And let me explain the importance of this. What Rebecca said earlier could not be more significant. Heather Tug, Jaffe, and a couple of brave souls filed the Uniform Commercial Code filings, the UCC filings, in December 2012. Those filings were conducted under the highest provenance of law on Earth, okay? And they were at the time known as the OPPT, the One People's Public Trust. And they delivered the UCC filings, effectively lodged them with 253 corporate nation states around the world, calling them out under pure law for fraud and deception, treason, effectively. Now, this was conducted with surgical precision under law. And all of those corporate fictions, because get it straight, all of the 253 nation states on Earth are corporate fictions. They are privately owned corporations, owned by stockholders, all right? You need look no further than the central banking cabal, the House of Rothschild, and the central bankers, and the story goes far deeper than that, and it goes back into ancient lineage. But we're not going to go there. Those filings were made against those 253 corporate nation states. giving them room to rebut any of the charges. Well, they didn't rebut them. They were given an extension of grace. They didn't rebut. Another extension of grace. They didn't rebut. By the end of the third month, which is the last day of March 2013, correct me if I'm wrong, Rebecca, but the last day of March last year, every government on earth went into foreclosure under the highest interpretation of law that exists on earth. Now think about that. That is the Vatican City. That is United Kingdom, the Crown. That is the Corporation of the United States of America. 253 nation states went into foreclosure, and subsequent to that date have been acting in serious fraud, okay, because they're in foreclosure. It couldn't be more serious. So every man and woman in a costume, every policeman operating on behalf of the state or the crown, every civil servant, every registered building, every registered bicycle in the world is operating as a fraud, because every bicycle, car, motorcycle, house, farm, woodland, lake, aeroplane, are all of them registered to the crown or the state variously. And all of those fictions don't exist under pure law any longer, including, of course, the birth bond issue, the indentured servitude of human beings, the passports, the birth registration certificates, all are in fraud. All of them are operating in fraud now. So this is why no one is going to come out and tell us this. The exchequer in Britain isn't going to come out. The President of the European Union isn't going to come out anytime soon and educate us to the fact that they are the ones who are singularly responsible for the fraud and the treason, which incidentally in many countries is still punishable by death. We're talking serious stuff here. They're not telling that to the people, but this is the fact of where we're at. We're living now not only on the back end of a legacy of occultic traditions and priesthoods and secrecy and covert power control mechanisms. We're also now living in the bright light of pure fraud, pure treason. The only ones who are going to come to the rescue here are ourselves.
Yes.
The only ones who own the faith. And this is why the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, along with the other tribunals which are beginning to foment and take shape around the world, are the only means that we have at our disposal to begin to exact jurisprudence, real justice. It will maybe also mean ending up educating policemen on the street and the marshals and the parking ticket attendants. This is also incumbent on those of us who are choosing to awaken to this. The scale has fallen from our eyes. The mask of Jupiter has crashed to the floor. But if we still remain mute in this place and simply sit back and wait for CNN to deliver the news, forget it. Ain't going to happen that way.
Yes, exactly. I could not have said it better. And that is exactly why we're taking this to the people. Because it is the people themselves. We are the ones who have to get this across, that we know it, and we're going to stand up to this understanding, and we're no longer going to place ourselves under this slavery contract and under the dominion of these people. Nobody else can do it for us, guys. I'm sorry. You know, we're the ones who are going to have to take the lead roles. And I'm not talking about just me and everybody on this team. I'm talking about everybody who hears this. There is one piece of the puzzle that is yours to do. There is one thing that you can start tomorrow and then the next day, because I can promise you, once you start, the next step will be there. It just works that way. When you say yes to the universe supports you in ways that will knock your socks off if you're just willing to do it. So that's, yes, go ahead.
Consider this as well, that the Pope and the Queen of England and the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military, all of these people, the Secretary General of the United Nations, the President of the World Bank, all of these fictions multilateral institutions, as well as corporate nation-state fictions, are fictions. And they have a seal of office. And they have these characters hiding behind the seal of office, okay, protected by the seal of office. Well, let me explain something here and now to the Commander-in-Chief and to the papacy, to the Pope, and to the Queen of England. All of those seals of office are in fraud and in treason, all of them. And very soon, they will be released. The fictions will be released. And they will reveal behind the seals of office the living men and living women. That is Elizabeth, the woman. Elizabeth Windsor, the woman, not the Queen of England, because that no longer exists under pure law. The crown is a fraud and a fiction. The governments are frauds and fictions. And they will reveal the living men and the living women. And then those living men and living women will be held accountable. If they choose to remain in office, that's fine. Stay in office. But the Queen of England will be accountable for any harm, loss, or injury committed against any living man or woman by any agent of the Crown from that day forward. The Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. military will be held liable as a living man for any harm, loss, or injury that happens to any living soul on earth as an agent of the United States corporation or its grotesque quadrillion-dollar military machine. And the Pope of Rome will also be held accountable for the travesties being perpetrated, the genocidal agendas being undertaken in the name of the church and supported by the churches that have gone rogue. So think about this. It's worth us really considering. What does it mean when the corporate fiction actually goes into dissolution? It's already been demanded, commanded into dissolution by pure law. It is only the state of hypnosis and forgetfulness that humanity is still under that dream spell that perpetuates the myth of power. All of those are fictitious, and they're all entering into dissolution. Truly, this is the awakening.
And an awakening into sovereignty, and some will have to go through forced births of their self-sovereignty. Why? Because your local community will have to respond and react and or understand what disclosure means at a local level. And this is where New Earth Nation communities that are popping up all over the world are going to be key and vital as information sources, volunteer sources, so that people can come forth. People listening to this in the future, when you're asking questions, this will be one of those staple things that people go back and listen to find what sovereignty means, how to share, how to know, how to experience, how to see from the lens of perception of the people that have been at the top of the sovereignty field for quite some time. You know, we as each individuals are standing in our seats of power, in our hearts here in the now. And that's ultimately what disclosure means. You have to live in the now, and you don't have the corporate fiction to give your woes to so that they can send you a bill for more woes, whether it's dollars or psychic credits or whatever, or servitude. You know, you don't have to. The fiction will not be there, and you must be in your own sovereignty. And that is the umbilical cord, or the nipple that we're all still on, of domination and control.
And don't forget that the Pope himself sent the information out that any of the agents are no longer under the liability. You know, in other words, they were always under the immunity clause. They are no longer under that immunity clause. Yes, the motu proprio that he put out, which tells the agents that they no longer can stand under the sovereignty immunity clause. This has made a big difference in the local level. We have seen the agents have to come to the understanding that they're no longer under that, they're no longer protected. Now they're in their own personal status, personal liability. And as we have begun to go after their insurance bonds and things like that, it's making a huge difference. So this is part of what we'll be doing, is showing people how to help start taking their own responsibility when they are under these court orders and things that have no force of law anymore. So it's really big time when we get to stand up and move forward in a very different way, because we're doing it together. That's what the beauty of it is.
I'd really like to see inherent courts of equities begin to spawn up all over the United States and Canada. So much of Canada still uses inherent courts of equity, and in inherent courts of equity, you have an injunctive power that can go all the way up to the Pope in Rome or up to the cabinet level. To literally, you could have a single person come with clean hands in inherent equity and define what happened in 1864 in the United States, and there will be no taxes. You can have an injunction on everything that mentions tax revenue.
I'd like to add something here, if I may, and just interject a little, because I'm conscious that much of our dialogue and our conversation can be seen by others to be very much perpetuating the David and Goliath myth about us versus them. And I just want to throw something in here. A few years ago, when I was engaging very proactively with the United Nations, and I was doing it for different reasons, but principally in order for me to learn myself about the multilateral playing field, because I'd spent the best part of 10 years as a citizen diplomat and as an NGO going around the world working and meeting variously with leadership, but still being in a very kind of sequestered or cloistered way. What I wanted to do was to see how the multilateral engagement worked. And so I did spend a great deal of time in and around the UN for a couple of years and got some leverage within that institution. And the last time I was there, I was having a number of ambassadors come to meet me at my hotel because they didn't want to have these meetings inside the UN for obvious reasons. And I was educating a number of ambassadors in my hotel suite about the Codex Alimentarius, which a few years ago I thought was a desperately serious matter, that the United Nations, World Health Organization, and global pharmaceutical interests were conspiring towards harmonizing, as they put it, protocols and forcing effectively real medical breakthroughs and treatments out, and forcing toxic chemical poisoning into the marketplace. And so the Codex Alimentarius was a charter or a convention drawn up by the United Nations, and all countries were being forced into compliance with it and to signature it. And those that didn't want to sign it were then threatened by the World Trade Organization effectively. And the UN was using its muscle to force compliance of countries around the world to sign up to Codex Alimentarius, which effectively was trying to outlaw our own capacity to heal ourselves of cancers or anything, and only go with the mainframe solutions and cures and treatments, which we all know are engagements between central bankers, occultic Masonic interests, which are keyed into global depopulation and into the pharmaceuticals industry. So those various ambassadors over a number of days were coming for meetings with me. I was supplying them with paperwork, supplying them with chronologies and pathologies and evidences to show them what was happening. My first question to a number of them was, have you ratified Codex Alimentarius? A number of them said yes. A number of them said no, but we're close to it. And when I explained what was behind it, they were absolutely aghast. But I never had anyone get up and slam the door and walk out. They were men and women equal to the conversation. Once they heard and then saw the rationale for themselves, they were like, oh my God. And all I'm saying is they are leadership. They didn't know. They're good men and women, many of them. The overwhelming majority of civil servants, lawyers and doctors and butchers and bakers and candlestick makers are good men and women. But they have been co-opted. They've been programmed. They've been indentured into those psychological complexes. So I'm just suggesting this, that it became apparent to me in my engagements with world leaders over the years, and I'm talking also about sitting heads of state, it's become, I know this for a fact, that there is a tremendous will from those echelons for grassroots to succeed at doing exactly what we're doing. Because many of those people in positions of power are completely unable to action anything. They are owned, locked down, and there is a will from higher echelons, even and especially, I would suggest, in the military complex, in the policing establishments. There are good men and good women, good Eagle Scouts who are prevailing, and they are praying, willing us to succeed, so the grassroots can come up and meet the higher echelons, and together we can work to flush the serpent from our midst.
Yes, and the one thing that we are doing is educating every time we go before a judge with a sovereign consciousness and are clear about what we're doing. Then each person is contributing to the ability to get to the place where we can meet in the middle and begin to make some of these changes within our system. So I think it's going to take both. I absolutely do. And I think that that's part of what we're engaging with the larger dialogue, too.
Andrew, just to finish off, I was just saying to Simon earlier today that I was driving up the road from my own house, and it was in the middle of the day, beautiful sunny day, and I drove past a parking attendant, and he was making out a ticket to a car that I could see was parked with its wheel about 3 or 4 inches over a yellow line, but no crime being committed. And there was this guy licking his lips slavishly writing out a parking ticket. 160 pounds sterling, or some obnoxious amount of money, was going to be leveled against this vehicle for doing nothing. And I drove past it thinking, oh, well, there you go, that's a sign of it. You know. And then I stopped and I said, why am I commissioning it? And I turned my car around, drove back, and I put the window down. And I said to him, brother, what are you doing? What are you doing? Where is the humanity or the dignity in what you are doing? I said it's a beautiful day. Some young mother is dropping her children off with the father, and here you are making out a penalty, penalizing her for nothing. You know it's a crime against our species for you to be doing this. It's a crime against you yourself to be so undignified in your own placement as a living man that you'd be doing this. Well, the guy looked at me and he grunted, because those kinds of men in costume are prone to grunting before they understand anything. But I didn't let it go. I carried on, just asking, inviting him to look at who he was. Did he will this for himself as a young child to be doing this? Because that's enslavement. He was the one entrapped in the hologram. And it was a sad engagement. And I just invited him to really consider what he's doing as a living man with his mind, body, and soul.
And not aggressively.
Not aggressively. Well, I did insult him as I drove off, but only because he kept grunting and was unequal to the conversation. But I invited a pacific conversation. And I think the point Rebecca's making is that if each of us stopped just turning a blind eye to these travesties of justice, these inhumane travesties which happen every minute of every day around us, on the streets, in the post office, in the restaurant, it doesn't matter. Don't permission these any longer, not on behalf of yourself or on the behalf of anyone else who's vulnerable. If we start to intercede, that is where the intercessionary principle is divine in nature, is truly imbued with grace, is where we step up and defend the weak and the vulnerable in situations like that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Rebecca, I have a question for you.
All right.
So in these international tribunal courts, where are they being based out of?
We are still in the process of getting our groups together to do that, but from all over the world. I mean, we're getting judges who are stepping forward and saying they want to be involved in it.
If there are judges, you can immediately form an inherent court of equity on any Native American land that wants to start. That's a court of magistracy or a court of chancery. And immediately injunctive orders can be given to anything that's related to Native American states in the original treaties that were broken. And from there you can have an outpour of other, we'll say, targeted concepts such as the chairman of the Fed, President of the United States, each with a specific injunction order from some person coming in equity, in clean hands, and all the maxims of equity. And there are plenty of law ninjas out there who know exactly where the fiction begins and it needs to be presented. Just like Sacha was saying, as soon as they get presented, the judges go, oh my God. And what does one injunctive order mean? It means that the sheriffs, who are not NGOs, can actually issue arrest warrants for the state and not the corporate side.
Yes.
And that's the problem with the OPP. I love it. There is no enforcement. The
Right.
sheriffs have no power. And this is that next move, finding
Yes,
who will
yes,
take the power that is not an NGO, or at least a clean enough NGO to say that somehow, some way, we've been deputized by an estate authority that was not under the Spendthrift Trust. Inherent courts of equity are some of the simplest things to set up all throughout Canada, throughout Mesoamerica, even in the African countries. And as long as you start issuing flack, like sending up AA flack in World War II, injunctive orders, they have to respond until there is a series of sheriffs that says, all right, there's 3,000 injunctive orders on the Fed chairman. We have to do something.
Yeah.
There are people that will do it because they are patriots who are not programmed.
Yes. And Kevin Annette is leading the way on this. Are you familiar with what he's doing as far as getting the sheriffs behind this?
So my next question is at another level, once there is a mayor's court, you can start issuing fines to non-government organizations, such as every police organization throughout the United States can all of a sudden receive a bill.
Well, in point of fact, you don't need a mayor to do your bidding because that's also part of a fictitious enterprise. You are permitted to set in motion your own fee schedule. In point of fact, if a policeman stops you unlawfully, and 99.9% of the time police are stopping you unlawfully, all you need to do is to roll your window down about 2 inches. Certainly don't turn your car off or get out or unlock it, and don't answer any questions for a start. Always remain absolutely courteous and explain to the gentleman in a costume that you do not wish to engage in questions. You're going about your business. You have the right to travel unmolested unless the Constitution's been overturned entirely. And then explain to him that you're prepared to give him 1 or 2 minutes of your time in order to help to educate him as to pure law, whereupon, if he continues to detain you or attempt to detain you, you will apply a fee schedule and make sure you have a stopwatch, and you can explain and preferably be recording this on your smartphone, preferably have a witness in the car with you, and then explain that your fee schedule will begin in 2 minutes' time, and you charge $500 a minute. That's what you charge because you say so. Now, you've given fair notice there, in point of fact. One can have a bit of fun with this because at the end of the day, it is a circus. But that imposition of a fee schedule, if you're then prepared to pursue it, you can actually take that action forward because you've given good notice, you've established your own court, yourself as your own court of record, and your jurisdiction is being violated in that sense. It gets more complicated than that, but I'm just suggesting that we can actually have a little fun with this in the process of educating our brothers and sisters who are wearing badges and costumes.
What I was actually referring to, Sacha, is a sovereign being with a manor role who gets the mayor of a city and can make that city back to the original constitution, can start using the schedule of fees. And you can literally just print a clear sticker in your window. As soon as he comes up, he's noticed the sticker, and everything is right there in the sticker, and all you need is a dash cam.
I've got that in my car. I've got one of those stickers. You can also put a copyright symbol on your vehicle registration.
Yep.
And incidentally, you don't need a vehicle registration. That's a nonsense. That's a fiction. But if you've got one, I suggest you get a black felt tip pen, a bold one, and put a little copyright symbol on your registration mark. Any camera that tries to nail you for a speed ticket, they're infringing copyrights. They can't use that photograph as evidence.
There's all sorts of techniques we can teach here.
I want to make one comment about what I've done in my life is that because I know that I don't choose to be much of a part of the system, I'm doing as much as I can to make sure that I don't play. And I've owned my own home since I was 20, and now I just don't want to because I don't want to play. There's so many levels of what you have to do to be a part of the system to own a home in today's society. So I find that the less I do that are parts of the system, the happier my life is. So I'm liking this chapter, and I feel like we're really, really fortunate to be here at this time, to be part of the change. I'm so grateful, Sacha, that you invited me to do a crop circle show and then realized that I was the real deal. I wasn't making stuff up. And, I think that's most of us here, is that when we are the real deal and we're telling the truth from our hearts, we need a community to surround ourselves with, because it's kind of, I have to say, it's been kind of lonely out there, knowing all these things and not wanting to be out in public and act like a generic human. I'm not. I admit it. I'm a member, and I know stuff. So, I think that we need to just introduce ourselves and say, this is me, this is what I got, and if you don't like it, there you go. But it's a real time to just stop being part of the problem, and I agree more than ever to say, no, I'm not playing, and then go and move with integrity.
Maybe we can make that into a meme. Hi, my name is Patty Greer, and I know stuff.
And I don't want to play.
I love it.
I know stuff.
That's it. I know stuff.
And I ain't coming out to play.
Exactly.
Yes, I know stuff, and I'm not playing.
Exactly.
Andrew, you're on your 2-minute countdown.
Yeah, 2-minute countdown. I want to thank absolutely everyone, and the incredible Simon on the chair over here for being the intrepid co-host with Sacha, Rebecca, Patty, Laura, absolutely everyone. So Simon on the chair, you have a moment on the throne to say something.
We had lovely mint tea together.
Lovely mint tea. There you go. No scones? No crumpets?
No, sir.
No crumpets.
Anyways, everyone, this has been a fabulous, fabulous broadcast. And I want everyone to give out their email or contact information, too. So Rebecca, why don't you give out your contact information if people want to get a hold of you and get onto these law projects?
Yes, Rebecca at humanitad.org. Very easy to find.
Okay. Patty?
I'm pattygreer.com.
Okay. And Laura?
wondersofthewomb at gmail.com.
And the infamous Sacha Stone?
Sacha at humanitad.org.
And Mr. Simon on the chair?
SimonOnTheSofa.com. Just come over and listen to some other transformational conversations, and this guy appears on a couple of them, so there's lots going on.
Oh yes. And I want to thank our intrepid scientific and technical background gremlin hunter over there. So this has been our second of the new webinar. Everyone look forward for upcoming events, seminars, and everything else that's coming to the world of sovereignty law, spirituality, consciousness, ecology, permaculture, and everything I missed. All right, take us away to the ethers.
Each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge, it's the Holy Grail. Improvise. Mysterious. It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.
Hello, let's create, let's co-create, and let's change this world with love. No matter if you're from Alpha Centauri or Earth, we all began with the same birthing process. We live in a limited point of view. Living the mystical life daily is about striving for the unlimited point of view. Each day, each human being gets an infinite amount of choices. Living the mystical life daily is about facing obstacles and challenges. The level of awareness that you are working at means you have a responsibility to be equal with it. How does one truly let go of expectation? can make the moment that you wake up to the moment you go to sleep sacred. The keys to success: choice, 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 and choice.